Hi, I'm here with Senator Eric Oemig of the 45th Legislative District, including Carnation, Duval, Woodinville, parts of Redmond, Sammamish, and Kirkland. Senator, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Allison.
Last week you talked about the recession and its impact on the state budget. You mentioned some ideas about fixing that deficit. What are those ideas?
First, cuts, deep cuts. We're cutting salaries and staff. Second, we're realigning the functions of government so we can squeeze out more efficiencies in everything we do. Third, we're sorting through critical programs to see which ones we can cut without devastating families. And then finally, we're also looking for smarter ways to raise revenue.
What do you mean by smarter ways to raise revenue?
Well, I sit on the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee, so I spend time every month reviewing tax policy, the efficiency of the programs that we deliver. I also look at the work that the state auditor is doing on how we deliver most efficient services. And one of the things that we do as we're reviewing tax preferences is we've actually created a tax loophole that gives out-of-state companies a tax break that's not enjoyed by in-state companies. So we're making out-of-state companies more competitive, and it's basically giving away state tax dollars. So by closing that loophole, we'll make Washington state companies more competitive, and we'll enhance our revenue. That's smarter. That's smarter tax policy.
Definitely. Well, it sounds like you're doing a lot in that area. I've also heard that you've joined the Environment, Water, and Energy Committee. And have hit the ground running with that. So what was the inspiration behind joining that committee?
I'm actually rejoining the committee.
Rejoining.
After a year off. Quite a few colleagues have approached me, as well as the environmental community, and asked me to rejoin the committee. I think it's largely because of my scientific background and my use of data, so that I'm not moved by arguments that aren't really backed up with hard science. And and I've already introduced a bill in that committee. Again, because of my work looking at tax policy, we have a situation where we gave a tax preference to a local company this time, a coal-burning power plant. And at the time, it was a tax loophole to try and stimulate their economy and create family jobs, mining local coal. The problem was, when we set up this tax loophole, this preference, we didn't put it contingent on the coal actually being mined locally. So they shut the mine, fired all the people, imported the coal, and they still get the tax break. So here's something that costs us about $4 million a year, and it's absolutely not doing what it was originally intended to do. It's basically just giving away money while we go ahead and import out-of-state coal. So there's a loophole that we can close, and if you think about what we know about the impacts, the environmental impacts from burning coal, the last thing we want to be doing is subsidizing coal-sourced electricity when we're trying to also encourage renewables, solar and wind. And here we're, giving away millions to a coal plant. So that's a bill I'm pretty happy to be working on this session.
Senator, I understand there's another bill you're working on that has to do with renewable energy with TVs that you've introduced. Can you tell me a little bit more about that bill?
Well, it's actually it's an energy efficiency bill.
Okay.
For TVs, and so we've come up with an expression, leaky appliances. This is when you turn off an appliance, it still draws a lot of electricity. Further, when you're using the appliance, how much electricity is it drawing? And all things equal, for many people, a TV is kind of a commodity that they're looking at the picture quality, and they just kind of assume that the amount of energy it's burning is the same. But what we find is that's not true, that very simple changes in engineering make vast differences in how much electricity you're using while watching the television or after you've turned it off. California has recently passed legislation requiring disclosure of the amount of electricity that's being used so a consumer can make an informed choice. That just makes sense. They've also set some requirements for the amount of electricity that's being used. And here in Washington State, we'd really like to piggyback on that work so we don't end up becoming a dumping ground for the less efficient TVs. California and other states have introduced similar legislation. And so here in Washington State, I've basically replicated that work to bring those standards here so that we get the best, most efficient. And this is, just think about how do you do smarter. We want our consumers here in Washington State, the citizens, to be able to buy efficient televisions and to be able to make their television buying choices with information. And finally, they'll save money because their power bills will, their consumption will be less.
So it sounds like you're really focusing on renewable energy, confidence in consumer spending in many areas in that committee, and I'm sure you will be looking at other areas as well. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you for giving us an update on the week and what you're working on. If you'd like to make some comments for Senator Eric Oemig, please do contact his office. You'll see the contact information on your screen. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.